A challenge that surpasses welding overcome. Weld strain treatment heat for heat. With a gas welding torch, burn the welding reverse sideline to make it bright red. Welding concentration type. Concentrate on good welding. Accuracy is a post-process machining process cannot be taught at school. Weld, strain welding and dimensional accuracy matching type. Don't think too much about welding. Only think about strain treatment. Strain, weld. Strain treatment method: right pointing arrow, jig, hammer, press, hydraulic, welding procedure, heating, gas, rapid cooling, jack, hydraulic, clamper, expansion, contraction, strut, bar, etc. My circumstances. I can only use Japanese, so I use Google Translate to convert it into English. Since I am a company employee and a confidential workplace for prototypes, I cannot disclose any workplace videos or products. The construction method is also introduced to the extent that it does not interfere. It is open to the public because I think that there are places where people who suffer from strain can learn. The content is narrowed down to gas heating strain relief, suitable for high mix, low volume strain removal work. What is weld strain? One, joint expansion due to arc heat, it is really expanding for a short time. 2, shrinks when cooled, shrinks more than when temporarily attached. 3, expansion less than contraction, this difference remains as strain. Some of the viewers may doubt that what I'm saying is the opposite, as it should expand due to excessive welding heat. Yes, that's right. It swells for a short time at first. However, as the product cools, it starts shrinking. A contraction phenomenon that exceeds expansion occurs. Determine the welding procedure and start the main welding. Even if strain is treated in the post-process, it is not enough to just weld from anywhere. Down pointing arrow, strange warping. Strain is too large. Down pointing arrow likely to be irreparable. Down pointing arrow while working. I imagine a welding procedure that causes as little distortion as possible. If the shape in the previous figure is all around, distortion occurs even if the welding order is observed. Set a tension rod, etc., and weld. Weld from the end, 1, which is less affected by welding strain. Next is the outside. 2, the last is the inside. 3, weld, which is greatly affected by distortion. Deformation image due to strain after welding. Gas flame heating position. If the steel material turns red or orange after being broiled, it will return well. It is difficult to sear from the bottom as shown in the figure, so turn the ingredients over. The flame heating order of one and the second of may be reversed. After gas heating, it returns to the shape of the temporary attachment. In other words, you can come closer. If you overdo it, it will distort in the opposite direction. Completely. No one can do it in the original shape with no deformation. After heating, the temperature naturally drops and the deformation returns, but even after that, it gradually returns. It runs until it cools down completely. This is the biggest weakness of the heating method, strain relief, as it takes time to cool. The effect cannot be expected even if the same point is heated again before it cools down very much. I often let it cool down to some extent, check the accuracy, and complete it. This is because most of the patterns remain within the specified dimensional tolerances even after being deformed. I thought that the method of cooling with water was the best way to remove distortion. Therefore, after heating under the same conditions, right pointing arrow water cooling with a mist spray, cooling with a wet cloth, cooling with an air gun, leaving as it is. After confirming several types of plate deformation angles, water cooling had the least deformation, and leaving it alone had the most deformation. There is no need for water cooling, which requires equipment and takes time and effort. It is a stance that it is effective if strain is removed by repeating water cooling. Right pointing arrow reheating. Right pointing arrows I leave it mostly. Gas welding torch mainly use medium size, both from Trusco Nakayama Company, Limited. Orange Book. Quick couplers for torch connections, useful for those who often switch to a cutting torch. Thickness of gas heated steel plate, from over T4.5 to around T32. With thin sheets, the risk of failure right pointing arrow scrapping is high, so I don't do it. The thinner the material, the greater the strain. But the greater the return after heating. A thick plate has less strain, but also a less amount of return after heating. Gas heated torch, we use a medium-sized welding torch. And the crater is often 500 to 800. Effective from T9, small size is also used occasionally. Do not use a cutting torch as it will damage the flame port if used for heating. Due to damage, it does not become a good flame right pointing arrow because it cannot concentrate on heating. Gas. Hydraulic gas, mixture of hydrogen and ethylene and oxygen are used. Previously, acetylene and oxygen were used, but it has been changed to hydrocut gas, which is highly safe. I stopped using LP gas and oxygen because it took too long for the material to turn red. Hydraulic gas does not have as much heating power as acetylene, but when the oxygen cock is opened almost fully, the steel plate turns red as much as acetylene. However, it consumes a considerable amount of oxygen. The flame port for cutting needs to be replaced for hydraulic gas, but the flame port of the welding torch did not have to be changed. Acetylene is a good cutting flame. Attractive, focused flames. Hydraulic gas is similar to LP gas, and it is a pity that the flame is a little out of focus. Heating temperature. I'm not sure, but there is little change if the color does not change to red or orange. Excessive strain. Let it cool down, then heat the other side and return it. Risk of heat correction. Accumulate experience, but reduce the number of heat corrections as much as possible. Distortion and warping will increase and become unmanageable. The strength of the heated part is reduced. Weird distortions and warping become larger and cannot be dealt with. For example, the strength of the heated part deteriorates. Practice to correct in one shot with proper heat input without repeating weak heating that does not involve deformation. I changed from acetylene to hydraulic gas manufactured by Iwatani Corporation. Strain removal pattern. Temporary attachment, right pointing arrow, main attachment, right pointing arrow, completion, no strain treatment. Preliminary welding, right pointing arrow, main welding, right pointing arrow, strain treatment, right pointing arrow, completion. Partial temporary welding, right pointing arrow, final welding, right pointing arrow, strain treatment, right pointing arrow, temporary attachment of additional parts, right pointing arrow, final welding, right pointing arrow, distortion treatment, repeatedly, right pointing arrow, completion. High skill if you can do this. Strain treatment. People who can do it are rare, so if the employer doesn't keep them with appropriate treatment, there will be no successors. I think so. Strain equals source of high income, even if it's troublesome. If I don't have this, I'll end up in a trash box. Strategy. Until the product is completed, we draw up a plan such as to what extent the main welding is performed to remove strain, and to what extent additional members are attached to the product to remove strain. If this is neglected and all parts are tack welded and then all parts are welded and distortion is treated, there is a risk that the distortion will not be corrected and the required dimensions will not be met, resulting in scrap. Physical strength preservation. Press machine right pointing arrow heavy parts are placed on the table. The geta is heavy with iron. You have to prepare a geta of an appropriate size, and if you use a building block structure, there is a danger that the geta will blow off right pointing arrow tired gas heating right pointing arrow torch is light. No need for heavy jigs, shortening setup time right pointing arrow reduced fatigue. Locations requiring dimensional tolerance. Blue equals welded structural parts. A structure that repeats the main welding right pointing arrow strain treatment many times. If you confirm this figure, in order to meet the required specifications, the whole part will be temporarily welded right pointing arrow. The whole part will be defective if you weld the whole part. Even if the main welding of the whole part right pointing arrow strain treatment, it will be a defective product. Temporary welding to main welding to strain treatment to complete product in that range with a certain amount of component composition. A certain amount of additional parts are added to the finished product, and the range of temporary welding right pointing arrow main welding right pointing arrow strain treatment right pointing arrow additional parts is also made into a finished product. This process is repeated over and over to create a finished product with both strength and precision. There is no choice but to make it with the so-called patience welding. Thank you for staying with us for such a long time. I would be happy if you could refer to it.